The warning lights flashed red across the control room of Orbital Station Harmony. Commander Jake Morrison stood at the main window, watching the alien ship approach through the darkness of space. The vessel moved like liquid metal, smooth and silent, unlike anything humans had ever built. "Sir, they're requesting permission to dock," said Lieutenant Bobby Chun from his communication station. His voice carried a slight tremor that Jake understood completely. This was it? First contact with an alien species that had been watching Earth for months. Dr. Lisa Chun entered the control room, her tablet filled with notes and calculations. She had spent weeks preparing for this moment, studying the few transmissions the aliens had sent. The Zeltharians, as they called themselves, claimed to represent a powerful group of worlds that controlled much of this part of the galaxy. "Any last-minute changes to the protocol?" Jake asked her. Lisa shook her head. "We stick to the plan. Be polite, be careful, and try to learn as much as we can about them." Ambassador Kevin Torres arrived just as the alien ship finished docking. He straightened his formal diplomatic uniform and checked his notes one final time. Earth's government had chosen him to speak for all of humanity in these first meetings. The weight of that responsibility showed in his careful movements. "Atmospheric readings are normal in the docking bay," reported Sergeant Nancy White from her technical station. "Whatever they breathe, it's close enough to our air that we don't need suits." The docking bay doors opened with a soft hiss. Jake watched through the security monitors as three figures stepped out of the alien vessel. They were tall, much taller than any human, and moved with an unusual grace. Their skin appeared to have a crystalline quality, catching the station's lights and reflecting them in strange patterns. The lead figure wore what looked like formal robes that seemed to float around its body. Jake noticed that all three aliens moved as if they were walking through water, each step deliberate and flowing. "Impressive," Lisa whispered, studying the aliens on her tablet screen. "Look at how they move. It's like they're dancing instead of walking." Ambassador Torres led the human delegation to the main meeting room. The chamber had been prepared with special care, decorated with art and symbols representing Earth's many cultures. The hope was to show the aliens that humanity was diverse but united. The doors opened, and the three Zeltharians entered. The lead alien was even more impressive in person, standing nearly 8 feet tall with the elegant bearing that spoke of natural authority. Its crystalline skin shifted colors slightly as it moved, and its large eyes seemed to take in every detail of the room. "I am Kreeth, speaker for the Zeltharian Empire," the alien said. Its voice came through a small device on its chest, translating the words into perfect English. "We greet the people of Earth with respect and curiosity." Ambassador Torres stepped forward and bowed slightly. "I am Kevin Torres, representing the United Earth Government. We welcome you to our orbital station and thank you for this historic meeting." Kreeth's companions were introduced as Veltar, a military advisor, and Zalek, a scientist. All three aliens had the same graceful way of moving, as if gravity barely affected them. Jake noticed they seemed to glide rather than walk, their feet barely making contact with the floor. "Your world has caught our attention," Kreeth said, as they all took seats around the conference table. The alien chairs had been specially made taller to accommodate their height. "We have observed your species for some time and find you interesting." Lisa leaned forward slightly. "What exactly have you observed?" "Your rapid technological development, despite your limited resources," Veltar answered. "Your species has achieved spaceflight in a remarkably short time. However, we have concerns about your physical limitations." Ambassador Torres raised an eyebrow. "Physical limitations?" Zalek gestured with one long arm. "Your species appears quite fragile. Your bodies are dense and compact, clearly adapted for a harsh environment. This suggests a difficult evolutionary path that may have limited your potential. Jake felt a flash of irritation, but kept his expression neutral. The aliens were polite, but their words carried an unmistakable tone of superiority. They spoke about humans the way adults might discuss children who had accomplished something cute, but ultimately unimportant. "We have come to offer you membership in our galactic community," Kreeth continued. "The Zeltharian Empire has brought peace and prosperity to over 300 worlds. We can offer you protection, technology, and guidance as you develop." Protection. From what? Torres asked carefully. "The galaxy can be dangerous for young species," Veltar explained. "There are aggressive civilizations, resource conflicts, and natural disasters that could destroy a world like yours. Under our protection, Earth would be safe to develop at its own pace." Lisa studied her tablet, making notes. "What would this protection require from us?" "Simple compliance with galactic law, resource-sharing agreements, and acceptance of our guidance in external affairs," Kreeth said. "Your people would be free to live as they choose, within reasonable limits." Jake didn't like the sound of that. It sounded less like protection and more like being treated as a pet. But he kept his thoughts to himself and let the ambassador handle the diplomacy. "This is a significant decision," Torres said diplomatically. "Our government will need time to consider your generous offer." "Of course," Krieg agreed. "We would not expect an immediate answer to such an important matter. Perhaps we could visit your homeworld to better understand your civilization." Torres and Jake exchanged glances. They had discussed this possibility, but actually hearing the request made it real. Bringing aliens to Earth was a massive security risk, but it might also be an opportunity to show humanity's true capabilities. "We would be honored to host you on Earth," Torres said finally. "Our government would need to make arrangements, but we believe a surface visit could be arranged." Kreeth's skin patterns shifted to brighter colors, which Lisa interpreted as pleasure. "Excellent. We are eager to see how your species has adapted to such a challenging world." "Challenging?" Jake asked. "Your planet's environmental readings suggest harsh conditions," Zalek explained. "High atmospheric pressure, extreme weather patterns, and gravitational density readings that seem quite intense. Your species has clearly evolved to be hardy survivors." Jake almost smiled at that. If the aliens thought Earth was harsh, they were in for some surprises. But he simply nodded and said, "We've learned to make do." The meeting continued for another hour, covering basic diplomatic protocols and cultural exchange procedures. Throughout it all, Jake noticed that the aliens seemed to have trouble with simple physical tasks. They moved their hands slowly and carefully, as if everything required great effort. When the meeting ended, the three Zeltharians glided back to their ship with the same graceful movements they had displayed throughout the visit. As the airlock sealed behind them, Jake turned to his colleagues. "Well," he said, "that was interesting." "They think we're primitive," Lisa observed, checking her notes, "but also fragile. Did you notice how they kept talking about our harsh environment and challenging world?" Torres nodded thoughtfully. "They're offering us protection, but it sounds more like they want to control us. They seem to think we need their help to survive." "Maybe they do," Jake said, looking out at the alien ship. "But I have a feeling they're about to learn something about humans that might surprise them." The Zeltharian vessel began to move away from the station, heading back to their fleet. In a few days, they would return to visit Earth itself. Jake wondered what they would think when they experienced his world firsthand. He had a feeling it would be educational for everyone involved. The Zeltharian shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere like a silver teardrop. Inside the craft, Kreeth watched the blue and green world grow larger through the viewing port. The planet looked peaceful from space, but he knew appearances could be deceiving. "Gravitational readings are still showing unusual density," reported the pilot from the front of the shuttle. "The instruments must be malfunctioning." No civilized world would have such intense conditions. Kreeth nodded, though. Privately, he wondered if their equipment was truly broken. The humans had seemed sturdy during their meeting on the space station, but he had assumed that was simply their natural adaptation to a difficult world. Beside him, Veltar studied tactical displays, while Zalek reviewed biological data they had collected about humans. All three aliens were curious about this primitive species that had somehow achieved spaceflight despite their obvious physical limitations. The shuttle touched down at New Geneva Diplomatic Complex with barely a whisper. Through the windows, Kreeth could see human officials waiting to greet them. The landing pad was surrounded by strange structures that the humans called buildings, though they seemed far too heavy and solid compared to Zeltharian architecture. "Ready to meet our hosts?" Kreeth asked his companions. The shuttle door opened with a soft hiss. Kreeth stepped out first and immediately felt something wrong. His graceful movements suddenly became clumsy and heavy. Each step required more effort than it should, as if invisible weights had been attached to his body. Veltar followed, nearly stumbling as he left the shuttle. His usually perfect military bearing wavered as he struggled to maintain balance. Zalek emerged last, moving with obvious difficulty. "Welcome to Earth," called Ambassador Torres, approaching with a warm smile. The human walked with easy confidence, covering the distance between them in quick, casual steps that made Kreeth feel embarrassed about his own careful movements. "We are honored to visit your homeworld," Kreeth replied, trying to hide his discomfort. Speaking required more effort than usual, as if his chest was being compressed by an invisible force. Dr. Lisa Chun joined the group, along with several other humans who moved with the same effortless grace that Kreeth found increasingly disturbing. How did they make it look so easy? "We've prepared a tour of our facilities," Torres said. "I thought you might enjoy seeing how we live and work." The tour began with a simple walk around the complex. What should have been a pleasant stroll became an ordeal for the three Zeltharians. After just a few minutes, Kreeth found himself breathing heavily and struggling to keep up with the humans' casual pace. "Perhaps we could walk more slowly?" Veltar suggested, trying to sound diplomatic rather than desperate. "We would like to observe your architecture more carefully." "Of course," Torres agreed, though he looked puzzled by the request. The humans slowed their pace, but even their idea of slow walking was challenging for the aliens. Lisa noticed that their guests seemed to be having difficulty. "Are you feeling all right? You seem a bit tired." "We are simply taking time to appreciate the complexity of your primitive buildings," Kreeth lied smoothly. In truth, the structures around them seemed incredibly massive and solid, as if they were built to withstand tremendous forces. The group stopped frequently so the Zeltharians could rest, though they disguised these breaks as opportunities to study human culture. Each time they sat down, Kreeth felt momentary relief from that crushing sensation that seemed to press down on his entire body. "Your world certainly has intense environmental conditions," Zalek observed, trying to understand what was happening to them. The atmospheric pressure readings were accurate after all. "This is pretty normal for us," said Captain Steve Williams, who had joined them partway through the tour. "Actually, today's weather is quite mild. Would you like to see some of our recreational facilities?" The thought of more walking made Kreeth's crystalline skin shift to darker colors, but he managed to maintain his diplomatic composure. "That sounds educational." They entered a large building that the humans called a gymnasium. Inside, several humans were engaged in various physical activities that made the Zeltharians stare in amazement. One human was lifting heavy metal objects repeatedly, while others ran in circles on moving platforms. "This is where we exercise to stay healthy," Lieutenant Colonel Amy Rodriguez explained as she joined the group. She had jogged over from across the complex, barely breathing hard, despite covering what looked like a significant distance. Exercise? Veltar asked weakly. Physical conditioning, Rodriguez clarified. We need to work our muscles and cardiovascular systems to maintain peak fitness. The aliens watched in fascination and growing horror as humans casually performed feats that would have required mechanical assistance on any civilized world. One woman was repeatedly lifting herself up using only her arms, while a man was jumping up and down onto a raised platform that was nearly as tall as he was. Your species appears to be incredibly strong, Zalek observed, taking careful notes on his recording device. Not really, Rodriguez laughed. These are just basic fitness routines. Anyone can do them with a little practice. The tour continued to a dining facility where the three aliens faced another challenge. The simple act of lifting eating utensils became a struggle against the relentless force that seemed to be pulling everything downward. Kreeth watched in amazement as humans casually picked up objects that felt impossibly heavy to him. Is your food prepared in smaller portions? Kreeth asked, hoping to make the meal more manageable. We can certainly arrange that, Torres said, though he seemed confused by the request. Are you on some kind of special diet? We are simply adjusting to your unique culinary customs, Kreeth replied. Throughout the meal, the humans continued their normal conversations, occasionally mentioning activities that sounded impossible. To the struggling aliens, Captain Williams spoke casually about hiking in the nearby mountains, while Dr. Chin mentioned her morning run along the lake. You run for recreation? Veltar asked in disbelief. Sure, it's relaxing, Chun replied. There's something peaceful about a good 5-mile run to start the day. The three Zeltharians exchanged glances. These humans spoke of traveling 5 miles under their own power as if it were a pleasant diversion. On their homeworld, such distances would require vehicles or at least mechanical assistance. As the day progressed, the aliens' condition continued to deteriorate. Their graceful movements became increasingly labored, and their crystalline skin began to show stress patterns that Zalek recognized as early signs of structural fatigue. Perhaps you would like to rest in your quarters? Torres suggested, noticing their obvious distress. We are simply taking time to process the cultural significance of your civilization, Kreeth H. said, though privately he was grateful for the offer. Their assigned rooms were on the ground floor, which they initially saw as an insult, but now recognized as a mercy. Even the short walk to their quarters was exhausting, and each step felt like a monumental effort. Once alone, the three aliens finally allowed themselves to show their true condition. Veltar collapsed into a chair that was far too small for his frame, while Zalek began taking medical readings on himself. This is impossible, Veltar gasped. How do they live in such conditions? Their planet is more extreme than our worst projections, Zalek reported, studying his instruments. The gravitational force here is nearly 3 times what we're accustomed to. Our bodies are being crushed by their world's natural conditions. Kreeth stared out the window at the human complex, where he could see several people jogging past in the evening light. They moved with casual ease, as if the crushing force that was slowly breaking down his own body was nothing more than a gentle breeze. We need to reconsider our assessment of this species, he said quietly. If they can live and thrive in conditions that are nearly killing us, what does that say about their actual capabilities? Perhaps, Veltar suggested weakly, we have underestimated these humans. Outside their window, a group of human children ran past, playing some kind of game that involved jumping and running. The sight of youngsters casually performing movements that would challenge a Zeltharian warrior sent a chill through all 3 aliens. Contact the fleet, Kreeth ordered. Tell them we need to extend our stay for additional observations. And request a full medical consultation. What reason should I give? Zalek asked. Kreeth watched another human jog past, moving with effortless grace through conditions that were slowly crushing the life from his own body. "Tell them," he said slowly, "that our initial assessment may have been incomplete." As night fell over the diplomatic complex, the three Zeltharians struggled to adapt to a world that was far more challenging than they had ever imagined. Meanwhile, their human hosts went about their normal evening routines, completely unaware that their simple daily activities were being viewed as demonstrations of impossible strength and endurance. The galaxy's most powerful empire was about to learn a lesson about the danger of first impressions, and the three aliens were starting to understand that humanity might be far more formidable than anyone had realized. The second morning on Earth brought new challenges for the three Zeltharian visitors. Kreeth woke feeling as if his body had been beaten with heavy clubs. His crystalline skin showed hairline cracks along the stress points, and every movement sent waves of pain through his compressed organs. Beltar was in worse condition. The military advisor had developed a noticeable limp, and his usually perfect posture had collapsed into a hunched stance. Zalek had spent the night taking medical readings, documenting their deteriorating condition with scientific precision. "We cannot continue much longer," Zalek reported quietly. "Our exoskeletons are showing structural fatigue. The constant gravitational stress is compressing our internal organs beyond safe limits." Through their window, they could see human staff members beginning their daily routines. A maintenance worker was carrying what appeared to be extremely heavy equipment across the courtyard, whistling cheerfully as he moved. To the watching aliens, it looked like a demonstration of impossible strength. Dr. Alex Parker arrived at their quarters shortly after breakfast, introducing himself as a specialist in comparative biology. He had been called in ostensibly to discuss scientific cooperation, but Lisa Chun had briefed him on the visitors' apparent health issues. "I hope you're finding your stay comfortable," Parker said, settling into a chair across from the three aliens. "Dr. Chun mentioned you might be experiencing some adjustment difficulties." "We are simply adapting to your world's unique environmental conditions," Kreeth replied carefully. The effort of speaking left him slightly breathless. Parker nodded sympathetically. "Different worlds can certainly present challenges. What kind of conditions are you used to on your homeworld?" The question seemed innocent enough, but it opened a door to understanding. Zalek began describing their planets, atmospheric composition, gravity levels, and environmental factors. As he spoke, Parker took careful notes, quickly realizing that the Zeltharians came from a world with less than half of Earth's gravitational pull. "That's fascinating," Parker said, trying to hide his growing comprehension. "Your world sounds quite different from ours. It must feel strange to be in such a heavy environment." "Heavy?" Veltar asked, then immediately regretted drawing attention to his weakness. "Well, compared to what you're used to," Parker said diplomatically. "Every world has its own characteristics." Outside the window, Lieutenant Colonel Rodriguez jogged past on her morning run. She waved cheerfully at the group through the window, then continued her circuit around the complex. To the Zeltharians, the sight of someone moving so quickly and easily through their crushing environment was both amazing and terrifying. "Your species certainly seems well adapted to your world," Kreeth H. observed, watching Rodriguez disappear. "Around a corner, we do all right," Parker replied modestly, "though I suppose anyone would adapt to their home environment given enough time." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Captain Williams, who had come to check on their guests. He bounced into the room with typical human energy, carrying a tray of refreshments that looked impossibly heavy to the struggling aliens. "Good morning," Williams said cheerfully, setting down the tray with casual ease. "I thought you might like to see some of our local recreational activities today. There's a great hiking trail just a few miles from here, or we could visit the sports complex." The suggestion of hiking sent waves of despair through the three visitors. The idea of walking for miles through this crushing environment was like being invited to jump into a furnace. Perhaps we could observe some of these activities instead, Creed H suggested weakly. Sure thing, Williams agreed. We've got a youth soccer game this afternoon, if you're interested. Kids love showing off for visitors. The mention of children engaged in strenuous physical activity made Veltar's skin shift to darker patterns of distress. If human youngsters could perform athletic feats in this environment, what were the adults truly capable of? Dr. Parker excused himself to make arrangements, but not before taking more detailed notes about the Zeltharian's physical condition. Once he was gone, he immediately contacted Leza Chun with his findings. They're from a low-gravity world, he reported over his communication device, probably around 0.4 gravity. They're literally being crushed by our environment, but they're too proud to admit it. Lisa felt a mixture of concern and amazement. No wonder they think we're so strong. From their perspective, we must look like superhumans. Meanwhile, the Zeltharian delegation was taken to observe the promised soccer game. The sight of children running, jumping, and kicking a ball with effortless energy left the aliens speechless. These were not warriors or specially trained athletes, but ordinary human youngsters casually performing feats that would challenge adult Zeltharians. Your offspring are quite energetic, Zalek observed, trying to maintain scientific objectivity, while watching a 10-year-old boy leap high into the air to head the ball. Kids have a lot of energy, Torres agreed, not understanding the deeper implications of his words. Sometimes I think they could run forever. The game continued for over an hour, with the young humans showing no signs of fatigue. They sprinted back and forth across the field, collided with each other, fell down, and immediately jumped back up to continue playing. To the watching Zeltharians, it was like observing a different species entirely. On our world, Veltar said. Quietly, such activities would require mechanical assistance or special training facilities. Really? Torres asked, genuinely curious. What do your children do for fun? The question highlighted just how different their worlds were. Zeltharian children engaged in gentle, low-impact activities that would seem impossibly delicate to human observers. The idea of young ones running for hours and colliding with each other was both fascinating and horrifying. As the day progressed, the aliens were exposed to more examples of casual human strength. They watched maintenance workers moving heavy equipment, gardeners carrying large containers of soil, and office workers climbing multiple flights of stairs without apparent effort. Each observation reinforced their growing understanding that they had completely misjudged this species. The humans weren't fragile primitives who needed protection. They were living weapons, shaped by a world so harsh that it had forged them into beings of incredible strength and endurance. The breaking point came when a group of human teenagers decided to demonstrate their skateboarding skills for the visiting aliens. The young humans performed jumps, spins, and tricks that involved launching themselves into the air and landing with impacts that would have shattered Zeltharian bones. Amazing control, one teenager said, casually flipping his board with his foot. The key is learning to absorb the impact when you land. Absorb the impact. A phrase sent chills through the three visitors. These children spoke of withstanding forces that would be lethal to most galactic species, as if it were a basic skill. That evening, Kreeth finally made the decision to request medical assistance. He contacted his ship using encrypted communications, carefully framing the request as a need for environmental adaptation support rather than emergency medical aid. The planet's conditions are more challenging than anticipated, he reported. We require immediate consultation with our medical staff. The response was swift and concerned. Within hours, a medical team would be dispatched to the surface with equipment designed to help the delegation cope with extreme environmental conditions. As night fell, the three Zeltharians sat in their quarters, contemplating the day's revelations. Outside their window, they could see human security guards beginning their night patrol, walking casually through an environment that was slowly killing the representatives of one of the galaxy's most powerful empires. "We need to reconsider everything," Kreith said quietly. "Our entire assessment of this species was wrong. If they can thrive in conditions that are lethal to us," Veltar added, "what happens when they leave this world? What are they capable of in normal galactic environments?" Zalek was already calculating the implications. In a standard 0.4 gravity environment, these humans would be able to jump 3 times higher, run 3 times faster, and lift 3 times more weight than they do here. The 3 aliens sat in silence, processing the magnitude of their miscalculation. They had come to Earth expecting to find a primitive species in need of guidance and protection. Instead, they had discovered a race of beings who had been forged by their harsh world into something the galaxy had never seen before. "The Galactic Council needs to know about this," Kreith said finally. "But first, we need to survive long enough to make our report." Through their window, a human jogger ran past in the moonlight, moving with easy grace through conditions that represented a death sentence for most known species. The sight served as a stark reminder that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their intelligence, but their world itself, which had shaped them into something unprecedented in galactic history. The 3 representatives of the mighty Zeltharian Empire settled in for another night of struggling to survive on a world the humans simply called home. The third day brought both relief and revelation for the Zeltharian delegation. Dr. Janet Foster had worked through the night to modify several rooms with gravity reduction technology, creating small zones where the aliens could recover from their ordeal. The humans had approached this as a simple engineering challenge, not understanding they were literally saving lives. "This should help you feel more comfortable," Foster explained as she showed the aliens to their new accommodations. "I've reduced the gravitational field to about 40% of normal in these rooms." To the Zeltharians, the modified chambers felt like paradise. For the first time since arriving on Earth, they could move without constant pain. However, the relief came with a disturbing realization about human technological capabilities. These primitives had casually solved a problem that would have required major engineering efforts on most civilized worlds. "Your gravity manipulation technology is quite advanced," Zalek observed, studying the field generators with professional interest. "Oh, this is pretty basic stuff," Foster replied modestly. "We've been working with artificial gravity for our space stations for years. This is just the same technology in reverse." "Basic stuff." The phrase echoed in Veltar's mind as he watched Foster make final adjustments to equipment that represented cutting-edge science by galactic standards. These humans spoke of manipulating fundamental forces as if it were routine maintenance. Major Chris Baker arrived shortly after breakfast with news that made the aliens both excited and terrified. He had arranged a demonstration of human military capabilities, thinking it would be an impressive but manageable display for their distinguished visitors. "We thought you might be interested in seeing how our people train and prepare for various challenges," Baker explained enthusiastically. "Nothing too intense, just some basic exercises and procedures." The demonstration began at a training facility outside the main complex. Commander Elena Vasquez led a unit of Space Marines through what they called standard conditioning routines. To the watching Zeltharians, it looked like a display of superhuman warriors preparing for impossible battles. The Marines began with simple running exercises, covering several miles at a pace that would have been considered sprinting on most worlds. They showed no signs of fatigue, chatting casually among themselves as they moved through their crushing environment with practiced ease. "This is just our warm-up routine," Vasquez explained to the struggling aliens. who had been transported to the viewing area in specially modified vehicles. "We like to get the blood flowing before we start the real training. Warm-up routine." Crete H felt his skin patterns shift to colors of deep concern. If this incredible display of endurance was merely preparation for actual training, what were these beings truly capable of? The real shock came when the Marines began their strength training. One soldier casually lifted a metal bar loaded with weights that would have required mechanical assistance on any civilized world. Others performed exercises that involved supporting their entire body weight using only their arms, repeatedly lifting themselves up and down with apparent ease. "Your warriors are quite capable," Veltar observed weakly, taking careful notes on everything he witnessed. "These aren't our elite forces," Baker replied proudly. "These are just regular Marines. Every one of them volunteered for space duty, which means they'll be even more effective once they get out there where the gravity is lighter." The comment sent waves of alarm through the three aliens. These incredible beings would become even more powerful in normal galactic environments. The implications were staggering. The demonstration continued with combat training exercises. The Marines practiced hand-to-hand fighting techniques that involved grappling, throwing, and striking with forces that would be lethal to most species. They treated these dangerous activities as routine training, laughing and joking with each other between exercises. "We focus a lot on adaptability," Vasquez explained as two Marines demonstrated a particularly impressive throwing technique. "Our people need to be ready for any environment they might encounter out there." Commander Vasquez then led the group to observe zero-gravity training simulations. The facility had special chambers that mimicked space conditions, allowing the Marines to practice combat and maneuvering techniques for space-based operations. "This is where we really have fun," one young Marine said, floating effortlessly through a complex three-dimensional obstacle course. "After training on Earth, space feels like flying." The alien observers watched in growing amazement as humans performed acrobatic maneuvers in simulated zero-gravity that exceeded the capabilities of most species, even in their natural environments. These beings had trained themselves to excel in conditions where their natural advantages would be multiplied many times over. "Your people seem to enjoy these challenging conditions," Zalek noted, recording everything for later analysis. "Challenge makes us stronger," Vasquez replied simply. "We train hard here so that everything else feels easy." The philosophy behind those words struck the aliens like a physical blow. These humans deliberately sought out difficulty and hardship as a way to improve themselves. They had turned their harsh world's challenges into advantages through pure determination and training. The final demonstration nearly overwhelmed the watching aliens completely. Dr. Lisa Chun had arranged what she called a cultural exchange activity, inviting Crete H to experience a typical human childhood recreation area. The playground equipment had been designed for children, but even these simple devices proved beyond the capabilities of the adult Zelfarian diplomat. "This is where our young ones play and develop their physical abilities," Chun explained, gesturing toward climbing structures, swinging devices, and other equipment that looked like torture devices to alien eyes. Crete attempted to use what humans called monkey bars, metal rods suspended in the air that children used to swing from one to another using only their arm strength. Even with the assistance of the gravity reduction equipment, he could barely support his own weight for more than a few seconds. Meanwhile, a group of human children who had been brought to meet the aliens demonstrated the equipment with casual ease. A 7-year-old girl swung across the entire length of the monkey bars twice, then performed a series of flips on another piece of equipment before running off to climb a tall structure that looked impossibly dangerous. "Your offspring train for combat from a very young age," Veltar observed, watching children perform feats that would challenge adult warriors on his homeworld. "They're just playing," Chun laughed. Children need physical activity to develop properly. This equipment helps them build strength, coordination, and confidence. Just playing. The aliens exchanged glances of disbelief. These children were casually developing capabilities that most galactic species could never achieve, even with mechanical enhancement. As the day continued, the demonstrations revealed layer after layer of human capability. Engineers casually moved heavy equipment that should have required vehicles. Medical staff demonstrated emergency procedures that involved carrying patients over long distances at high speed. Even office workers routinely climbed stairs and carried objects that would challenge trained athletes on low-gravity worlds. The breaking point came when Captain Williams, still trying to be helpful, offered to show the aliens some recreational videos from human entertainment. The clips showed people engaged in activities they called sports, which appeared to be ritualized combat involving incredible displays of strength, speed, and endurance. "This is what we do for fun on weekends," Williams explained cheerfully, showing footage of humans running for hours in an event called a marathon. Some people really enjoy pushing their limits. For fun, on weekends. The aliens watched in silent horror as humans engaged in activities that would be considered extreme endurance trials on any civilized world, treating them as casual entertainment. "We need to contact the fleet immediately," Veltar whispered to his companions during a brief break in the demonstrations. "The Council must be informed about what we've discovered here." "Agreed," Kreith replied quietly. "But we must be careful how we present this information. The implications are enormous." Zalek was already composing his report in his mind. How could he explain to the galactic community that they had encountered a species that considered crushing gravitational conditions to be normal? How could he describe beings who trained themselves to exceed their already incredible natural capabilities as a form of recreation? That evening, as the three aliens recovered in their gravity-modified chambers, they watched through their windows. As humans went about their normal evening activities, joggers ran past in the fading light, children played in nearby parks, and workers completed their daily tasks with the same casual ease that had amazed and terrified the visitors for 3 days. "We came here expecting to find a primitive species that needed our protection," Kreith said quietly. "Instead, we've discovered something that may change the balance of power in the entire galaxy, if they ever decide to expand beyond their world," Veltar added. "No military force in known space would be able to stop them." Perhaps, Zalek suggested thoughtfully, we should focus on ensuring they remain our friends rather than our enemies. Through their window, they could see human families gathering for evening meals, couples the emergency meeting aboard the Zeltharian. Flagship Constellation's Edge brought together the most powerful military minds in the sector. Fleet Commander Mordic studied the reports from the surface mission with growing alarm, his crystalline features shifting through patterns of deep concern. "You're telling me that these humans live in nearly 3 times our standard gravity?" Mordic asked, reviewing the medical data that Zalek had transmitted from Earth. "Correct, Commander," came Kreith's voice through the communication system. "And they don't just survive in these conditions. They thrive in them. What we observe suggests capabilities far beyond anything in our database." Admiral Ryan Thompson's voice crackled through space communications from Earth's orbital command center. He was discussing routine matters with his staff, completely unaware that his casual conversation was being analyzed by alien military strategists as intelligence. "Data. The Mars colony ships are ahead of schedule," Thompson reported to his officers. "Our crews are excited about the reduced gravity environment. They're calling it a vacation from Earth conditions." The phrase sent chills through the listening Zeltharians. These humans considered space environments to be relaxing breaks from their normal living conditions. What had seemed like harsh frontier conditions to most galactic species were seen as pleasant retreats by Earth's people. Fleet, Commander Mordick turned to his tactical advisors. Run projections. If these humans possess the physical capabilities described in these reports, what would they be capable of in standard galactic environments? The computer analysis took several minutes. When the results appeared, they painted a picture that changed everything the Zeltharians thought they knew about galactic power structures. In normal 0.4 gravity conditions, humans would be able to jump distances measured in tens of meters, lift objects that would normally require vehicles, and move at speeds that would make them nearly impossible to track or target. Sir, reported the tactical officer, based on this data, a single human soldier in standard galactic conditions would be equivalent to a squad of our best warriors, even without considering their apparent technological capabilities. Back on Earth, Dr. Parker was meeting with President Helen Martinez via secure communication. The president listened carefully as Parker explained the situation with their alien visitors and what it revealed about humanity's place in the galaxy. So these aliens came here expecting to find a weak species that needed protection? Martinez asked, reviewing the diplomatic reports. That appears to be correct, Madam President, Parker replied. Their own evolution in low-gravity environments has made them fragile by our standards, though they're clearly intelligent and technologically advanced. Martinez nodded thoughtfully. And now they're realizing that we're not the ones who need protection. The conversation was interrupted by a communication from Ambassador Torres, who was dealing with an increasingly delicate diplomatic situation. The Zeltharian delegation had finally admitted they needed medical assistance, though they were still trying to frame it as routine environmental adaptation rather than a life-threatening emergency. They're proud people, Torres reported. They don't want to admit weakness, but they're clearly struggling with our gravity. Dr. Foster's modifications have helped, but they can't stay here much longer without serious health consequences. Meanwhile, in the modified chambers at the diplomatic complex, the three alien representatives were coming to terms with the full implications of their discovery. Kreeth had spent hours composing his report to the Galactic Council, trying to find words that would convey the magnitude of what they had learned. How do we explain this to the Council? Veltar asked, pacing carefully in the reduced gravity environment. How do we tell them that we've found a species that makes our greatest warriors look like children? We tell them the truth, Kreeth replied. We tell them that humanity represents something new in galactic history. A species shaped by extreme conditions into beings of incredible capability, but who have chosen cooperation over conquest. The final diplomatic meeting took place in a specially prepared chamber, where the gravity could be adjusted to accommodate both species. President Martinez participated via holographic projection, while the alien delegation appeared in person, moving carefully in the modified environment. We have come to understand, Kreeth began formally, that our initial assessment of humanity was incomplete. Your species possesses capabilities that we had not anticipated. We appreciate your honesty, Martinez replied diplomatically. We hope this understanding can form the basis for a productive relationship between our peoples. Admiral Townsend joined the meeting to discuss practical matters of space cooperation. His casual mention of humanity's expansion plans sent ripples of concern through the alien delegation. Our long-term goals include colonizing Mars, establishing mining operations in the asteroid belt, and eventually expanding to other star systems, Thompson explained. We're excited about the opportunities that space offers. To the Zeltharians, this sounded like an expansion plan that could reshape the entire galaxy. A species with humanity's physical advantages, combined with their obvious technological capabilities and collaborative nature, could potentially dominate space in ways no civilization had ever imagined. Perhaps, Kreeth H. suggested carefully, we could discuss ways for our peoples to work together as partners rather than following traditional protectorate arrangements. That sounds much better to us, Martinez agreed. We've always believed that. Cooperation produces better results than domination. The negotiations that followed were unlike anything in galactic diplomatic history. Instead of a powerful empire dictating terms to a weaker species, two civilizations worked together to establish genuine partnership agreements. The Zeltharians offered their advanced space technology and knowledge of galactic civilizations, while humans provided their unique perspectives on high-gravity world development and their natural advantages for certain space operations. Commander Morrison, observing the proceedings, was struck by how the dynamic had shifted. The aliens who had arrived expecting to find subjects had instead discovered potential allies who might be stronger than themselves. "It's interesting," he commented to Dr. Chun during a break in negotiations. "They came here thinking they were the strong ones offering protection to the weak. Now they're learning that maybe they're the ones who could use some friends." The final agreement established frameworks for technology exchange, cultural cooperation, and joint exploration missions. Most importantly, it recognized both species as equals in the partnership, despite their vastly different physical capabilities. Fleet Commander Mordick, reviewing the final treaty terms, made a decision that would echo throughout galactic politics. Instead of positioning the Zeltharian Empire as humanity's protector, he recommended to the Galactic Council that Earth be approached as a potential ally of unprecedented capability. "These humans," he reported in his official communication, "represent something new in our understanding of intelligent life. They have been forged by their world into beings of incredible strength, but they have chosen to use that strength for construction rather than destruction, exploration rather than conquest." As the Zeltharian delegation prepared to leave Earth, they did so with a mixture of relief and profound respect. The crushing gravity that had nearly killed them was simply home to the humans, who moved through it with the same ease that other species showed in comfortable environments. Captain Williams, ever helpful, offered final assistance as the aliens prepared to board their shuttle. "I hope your stay was educational," he said cheerfully. "Feel free to visit again any time." Educational. Kreith almost smiled at the understatement. Their visit had fundamentally changed their understanding of what was possible in the galaxy. They had discovered that the universe was larger and more dangerous than they had imagined, but also that it contained allies who might help them face whatever challenges lay ahead. The shuttle lifted off from Earth's surface, carrying 3 aliens, who had arrived as representatives of a superior civilization and were leaving as ambassadors to a potential galactic power. As Earth fell away below them, they felt the familiar relief of returning to normal gravity conditions, but also a new appreciation for the world that had created such remarkable beings. Admiral Thompson's final communication to the departing Zeltharians captured the essence of what made humanity unique in the galaxy. "Safe travels," he transmitted. "We look forward to exploring the stars together." Exploring the stars together. The phrase represented a new chapter in galactic history, one where humanity would take its place not as subjects or protectors, but as partners in the greatest adventure of all, the exploration of the infinite universe that awaited them all. Galaxy had just gained its most unlikely and perhaps most valuable new members. Beings who had been shaped by their harsh world into something unprecedented, but who had chosen to use their gifts for the benefit of all.